into a discussion in a way that is troubling, particularly because there are a certain percentage of people that follow everything that the president says and hang on his every words. And so as he says these things, it inevitably brings out the crazies. And sometimes, fine, you get a Twitter or an email or something, but the harder part is, people showing up at the house or people sending threatening mailings or making death threats, because that, again, is not just me, it's, the family who lives in the same house. And so, I think that cruelty is unfortunately part of the point. I mean, this is designed to stifle voices who might speak out. It's the same sort of behavior you see him engaging in against, Colonel Vindman within the Department of Defense or Ambassador Yovanovitch within our State Department, all the people who testified during the impeachment investigation. It's designed to stifle anybody who might speak the truth about him and his behavior.
Let's talk about what happens in the remaining weeks before this election. You said last week that the Russian government and Vladimir Putin is working, these are your words, as we speak, to get Donald Trump reelected. What does the FBI know that you can tell us about what Putin and the Russians are doing in the lead up to the election?
Well, we certainly do know, and again, to the point being, yes, these are my words, but they're also my words buttressed by what I hear the director of the FBI and administration officials saying themselves. We clearly knew that the Russians were very active in the 2016 elections, and when we were watching at that time, we knew that there were certain both techniques and information that they had that we expected them to use, and they didn't. Now, there are a number of explanations for that. The most likely in my mind is that, like everybody else, every pollster and most Americans, they expected Clinton to win and had things lined up for that. But when the candidate they wanted won, then they didn't have to use them. So what they did is, certainly in my opinion, return them to their quiver, as it were, and hone them over the intervening 4 years to use this time. So with specificity, I can't get into a lot because it's classified, but I can point to some of the things that have been noted in the public arena through statements by the government, and Microsoft published a great deal of information. The Russians have become much better at hiding their hand when they want to do that. So in other words, being able to attribute something back to say, okay, we know we can attribute this to, for instance, the IRA in St. Petersburg or a group of Russian contractors. They've gotten better at hiding that. It's not to say they're always hiding it. Part of what Microsoft showed was that, the GRU, Russian military intelligence, was kind of getting to very, not hand-fisted, but very overt sort of ways of trying to hack in. They're not trying to hide what they're doing. And again, there could be any number of reasons for that, but they are still coming at us. They're doing it in a very robust, broad manner, and I think we're very vulnerable, certainly going into November.
Piece in the New York Times a couple of days ago talking about ransomware attacks, and that the ransomware attacks that have been increasing in the United States are meant to sow the impression of chaos, that you don't know on election day whether your vote is going to matter, whether it's going to count, whether it will be counted. If you're able to sow that sort of chaos, from your perspective, what happens?
Well, I think if you're able to do it, you achieve their goals. What Russia, at the end of the day, Russia doesn't much care who's leading America. What Russia wants is America divided amongst the United States, amongst itself, us fighting each other, us withdrawing from NATO, us withdrawing from the global environment, us no longer supporting nascent democracies around the world or promoting Western democratic ideals that provide splits and schisms and rebalancing amongst alliances all over the place around the globe, which provides opportunities for Russia everywhere, whether it's Syria, Eastern Europe, the China, or just across the board. Our retrenchment provides them opportunity. And what's most concerning is, Russia's doing this into a U.S. environment where the same things they are claiming on the disinformation side are the same things being, sort of spoken about by our president, by our attorney general, saying the same things. Mail-in balloting isn't secure. Well, of course it's secure. There's going to be massive voter fraud. There's no data to support that. But so when you have Trump himself saying the same thing that are coming out through Russian disinformation, it's kind of a force multiplier in a horrible way. And so, I am worried, given the domestic environment in the U.S. in 2020, which is far worse than it was in 2016, that this is an extraordinarily ripe environment for Russian mischief.
Just two things before we let you go. One is, do you think that what you know and what you've been talking about, will it all sway the supporters of the president? When he says this is a hoax, this is fake, none of this is real, and this is the Democrats worried about losing the election, and so they're cooking something up. How do you think that lands with his supporters?
Well, I think what will land with the supporters is some of the things that it points to about the president's behavior with regard to Russia. And specifically, why, examples like this. When we find out that the GRU is placing bounties on the heads of American soldiers in Afghanistan, and the president says absolutely nothing. Now, his president's supporters may not care about Russian support of Trump, but by God, they care about their sons, their daughters, their brothers, their sisters, their spouses who are serving in the military. And when they watch those servicemen and servicewomen get no support from their president, if this helps highlight that problem, then I think it can make a difference. So, I am hopeful that this will help kind of highlight some of the just absurd, frankly, anti-U.S. actions that Trump is engaged in.
In a word or two, what do you think you'll wake up to on the 4th of November?
An unsettled result. I think it's going to take probably a few days to count all the votes, and particularly in the U.S., where we're used to having an idea when we go to bed on the election night of who won. I think there's a good chance that we won't. Or that it will be litigated, and it's going to need calm heads and calm nerves to see us through the process until we get to the final result.
Peter Strzok, it's great to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
Peter Strzok, the deputy of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division in years past. His new book is called Compromised: Counterintelligence and the Threat of Donald J. Trump. Of course, the first presidential election happens this evening. You can listen to it on CBC Radio, watch it on CBC Television, stream it at cbcnews.ca. That's it for The Current for today. Q is up next. Tom Power speaking with John Cleese. Monty Python got a new book out called Creativity, a Short and Cheerful Guide. Always interesting to hear from John Cleese, and you'll hear him coming up on CBC Radio 1. We've been talking about the challenges that performers are facing in these pandemic times. There are creative ways that people have figured out to stay connected and share their music and their talents. It's been 6 months since the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra performed for a crowd in the Centennial Concert Hall. Later this week, a smaller and socially distanced audience will sit down to hear Beethoven and Bach. Big step from earlier this summer when the symphony had to cancel their performance at Manitoba's 150 celebrations. Not to let the pandemic ruin things completely, they instead recorded a performance to celebrate Manitoba and recognize our diverse cultures and unite as one voice. Here's a bit of that recording, the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra performing One Voice by Ruth Moody. I'm Matt Galloway. Thanks for listening to The Current. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This is CBC Radio 1, 88.1 FM and 690 AM in Vancouver. As America prepares to vote, Donald Trump will face off against Joe Biden in the first 2020 U.S. presidential debate. Tonight, the candidates will go head-to-head in what's sure to be an intense showdown. Join the CBC News team tonight for the first 2020 U.S. presidential debate. Coverage begins at 8 p.m. Eastern on CBC News Network, and the debate goes live at 9 p.m. Eastern on CBC Gem, CBC Radio 1, and CBC Listen. The National Research Council official time signal. The beginning of the long dash indicates exactly 10 o'clock Pacific Daylight Saving Time.